My name is Emily Bynon and this is the fourth video in my series, My 5 Favourite Flute Books. The first two were about books by the famous French flute player Marcel Moyse, his 24 Little Melodic Studies, and De la Sonorité. And the third was Reichert's Daily Exercises, Opus 5. And I'll put links to those videos in the description box here below in case you want to go back and watch those after you've watched this one. In this video, I'm going to talk about a book written by two people. One, arguably the great-grandfather of modern French school flute playing, and the other, one of his most famous students. I am, of course, talking about Paul Taffanel and Philippe Gaubert, and my fourth favourite flute book is Exercices Journaliers, or to give it its full English title, 17 Big Daily Finger Exercises for Flute. I'm going to start with sharing a little background about the writers and how the book came into being, then give you some general tips on working from this book, the when and how, and also what to look out for and what to listen out for when you're practicing these exercises. And then I'll go on into a little detail about each exercise individually. Now, actually, this entire book is just the fourth part of their massive complete flute method. In total, there are 8 parts. Part 1, General Technique, which covers posture, tone, articulation, long notes, scales, intervals, and even some nice duets. Part 2 is all about ornaments, trills, mordents, and turns. Part 3 is about articulation. Part 4 is the daily exercises section, which is the focus of this video. Part 5, progressive studies. Part 6, 12 studies for virtuosity. Part 7, style. This discusses interpretation, so things like vibrato, cadenzas, and where the breath is described as being the soul of the flute. And they say that we must have the same dexterity with our air as the violinist has with their bow. And finally, Part 8 covers difficult passages from orchestral parts, including symphonies and stage works. But let's just focus on Part 4 today. I promise you there's more than enough to get our teeth into here. But first, let's briefly find out about the authors and why they wrote this book together. Who were they? Paul Taffanel studied with Louis Dorus, first privately and then at the Paris Conservatoire, importantly in the very first class where the new Bohème flute was the official instrument. Taffanel was awarded his Flute Premier Prix, or what we would call graduation, in 1860, but he stayed on at the Conservatoire and graduated in harmony 2 years later and counterpoint and fugue a few years after that. He then followed his teacher Dorus into the Paris Opera and, quite aside from that, had an extremely busy and varied career, playing solo performances, chamber music, conducting, writing and, of course, composing. He became the professor at the Paris Conservatoire in 1893, and one of his earliest students was Philippe Gaubert, although the young Gaubert had been having private lessons with Taffanel for quite a while, even before entering the Conservatoire class. In fact, it was Taffanel's father who initially recognised Gaubert's talent, and in addition to teaching him the rudiments of theory, also taught him flute on the very same instrument on which the young Paul Taffanel had started learning. The two became great friends and remained close until Taffanel's death in 1908. Gaubert was in many senses Taffanel's natural heir and had already followed his teacher to playing and conducting positions in the opera, the Society of Chamber Music for Wind Instruments, which incidentally was founded by Taffanel, and eventually in 1919 he also succeeded Taffanel as the professor at the Paris Conservatoire. Now, Taffanel had been collecting various exercises, studies and lesson notes throughout his playing and teaching career, often consulting Gaubert, and he intended writing a complete treatise of the history, theory and practice of the flute. However, he was unable to complete the work before his death, so it was taken over by his student Gaubert. When to practice? At the front of the complete method, a daily practice routine is neatly laid out from Monday through to Saturday, where each day's practice is split neatly into 3 sections. Monday, Session 1, scales, legato. Session 2, arpeggios on the common chord. Session 3, studies. Tuesday, Session 1, scales in various articulations. Session 2, trills and sustain notes. Session 3, pieces, and so on. They also write that the scale practice must be done with a metronome, varying the articulations, and they offer 5 ways of practicing the sustain notes or long notes. Firstly, piano, soft. Secondly, forte or loud. Third way is crescendo. Fourth way, diminuendo. And then finally, crescendo, diminuendo. So this is a big book. And to maintain my motivation and sanity when I'm working on it, I choose a couple of exercises I'm going to focus on that day and set a time frame. You may choose to focus on just one exercise or maybe to work on 4. But if you work on several, then do try and vary your practice. Some scales and some chords, for example. I would also highly recommend keeping a practice log of some sort, making a note of which exercise you work on, which keys you've covered, which articulations and which metronome mark. Now, just a little note about the range of these exercises. They all work from low C to top B natural, and in 1923, when this book was published, that would have been more than adequate. However, since then, composers have rather pushed the boundaries, and nowadays, for advanced players, I think that working from low C, or even a low B if you have one on your flute, right up to the top C or maybe even top D might be good to aim for. How to practice. For me, the most important thing about practicing these exercises is that you practice them correctly, evenly and with good finger control, and above all, your very best sound. Play each line as though it's the most beautiful phrase of music. I'm reminded of my teacher, William Bennett, talking about his first lesson with Geoffrey Gilbert. He told me to bring the Moyes daily exercises, and I asked him, well, how fast should I play? Gilbert replied, well, as fast as possible. But then he proceeded to show me that as fast as possible is actually terribly slow. So, good posture, beautiful sound, healthy breathing, and then think about controlling your fingers, but always keep listening. And to encourage really concentrated listening, aim to learn these studies from memory. In some exercises, you might be able to simply memorize the pattern and thereafter play the entire exercise from memory. But for others, maybe just playing bar by bar or line by line from memory will mean you can close your eyes, and that will help develop a good critical ear. So let's get on and take a look at the 17 big daily exercises. The exercises. Number 1. This is a great way to wake up your ears and your listening. Basically, we're just going up and down the first 5 notes of a major scale. Firstly on the tonic, the first degree of the scale, and then from the 7th of the major scale a semitone higher. Now that sounds much more complicated than it really is. Just look at where the exercise begins. A low D. So the first 5 notes in D major are D, E, F sharp, G, A. But then we move to the E flat major scale, but starting on that same D. So D, E flat, F, G, A flat. At the end of that group, the notes are varied ever so slightly, so we can slip smoothly onto E flat major, starting on the E flat, the tonic. That's followed by E major starting on D sharp, and so on. It just keeps moving right through the range. Keep your fingers well controlled at all times and enjoy playing towards the top note in a natural musical wave. Above the exercise, as for all 17 exercises, there are 10 different ways to add articulation. Now you could do a new articulation on each scale, or vary the articulation each time you come back to the exercise. It's up to you. Now, I find one of the biggest dilemmas is where to breathe. Well, that's completely up to you and the tempo you take. Just take your time to listen to the air coming in, always relaxed and low. no gasping. And to encourage that, I like to use a whole beat so I stay relaxed and focused on good posture, sound, and the controlled fingers. Number 2. This follows exactly the same pattern as number 1, but this time in the minor keys. So starting with D minor, then E flat minor starting on the D, then E flat minor starting on E flat, E minor starting on D sharp, and so on. Number 3. This exercise has 2 parts, A and B. In part A, we have 4 2-octave scales going up and down, grouped in 4s, and in part B, we have 3 2-octave scales going up and down, now grouped in 6s. For both parts, we start in C major on the low C. Then we move up to the D, but still with a C major key signature, in other words, no flats or sharps. Then on to E, and so on, up the entire scale, but always in C major. Then step 2 is to add just the first flat to both part A and part B, so F major in other words. Starting on C, then on D and E and so on. Step 3, we add the first 2 flats, in other words B flat major, but still starting from low C, then D, then E flat. And we continue in the same fashion, going through the cycle of fourths, first through all the flat keys and then back through the sharp keys. Number 4. This may be the most famous exercise from this book, and like Reichert number 2, I practiced it long before I actually owned the book. It's really worth memorizing this one. It will not only help improve your listening, but in a purely practical sense, it's just so long that if you try and read it, you'll have to stop and turn the page 3 times. Enjoy each sunrise stretch of that octave and one note up to the top each time. And without lingering at the top, make sure that it really shows your most singing open tone. And then keep that warmth and openness as you come down too. It's a wonderful musical scale sequence taking us through all the major and minor scales, again following the cycle of fourths. So after C major and A minor, we move on to F major and D minor and so on. And again, Taffanel and Gaubert offer 8 different articulations for use when practicing this exercise. Michel Debost, professor at the Paris Conservatoire in the 1980s, developed the scale game, which consists of playing twice through all the keys of this exercise, known as EJ4, using 60 articulations and rhythms. There are already some great YouTube videos on this, and maybe one day I'll make a video about it too, who knows. Number 5. This is a straightforward chromatic scale exercise, again with 10 different suggested articulations. Keep your fingers even, well controlled, close to the instrument, and practice with a metronome. Number 6. Exercise 6 is split into 2 parts, and it's all about intervals. Part A is all about thirds, both ascending and descending, and part B is about sixths. Again, the authors suggest 8 different articulations, and each exercise is first to be practiced in C major without any sharps or flats, then, as with exercise number 3, adding a single flat each time, but always starting on the same low C, gradually working through the cycle of fourths, then back through the sharp keys, ending with G major, but still starting on the low C. Number 7. This is what I call a lovely noodling exercise. The notes are relatively close together, and yet the various combinations of notes are a real challenge to players of every level. The exercise begins just over the break between the first and second octave, so always keep an ear out for using exactly the right air speed for a good, healthy, centered tone. And remember that that very first E is actually the first note on the flute which is overblown or a harmonic from exactly the same note an octave lower. And a healthy airspeed and a healthy tone start from healthy breathing. Take your time to breathe. The particular finger coordination challenges in this exercise range from keeping a good balance of the instrument as we go from C to D, where almost all the keys are open, to almost all the keys being closed, to those combinations within a hand, particularly when you play this exercise in the top octave, as the authors recommend you do after you've perfected the middle register. In this exercise, instead of going through all the keys, because of the narrow focus of the notes, they advise practicing first with no sharps or flats, then going through the following 5 key signatures. Number 8. This exercise is all about broken arpeggios, diminished, minor and major. Each chord is written out without any sharps or flats, and for each letter there are 5 or 6 alterations to the accidentals to the written notes to cover each permutation. The chord starts small, just 2 notes, then 3 notes from the chord, gradually building up the chord note by note until it extends across the entire range of the instrument. Number 9. Number 9 is the reverse of number 8, where 8 started low, number 9 starts high and stretches further and further down the instrument. For both exercises, we are once again given 10 suggestions of articulations and, of course, always striving for your most beautiful sound, well-controlled fingers and steady, even rhythm. Number 10. This exercise is based on 10 bars of major, minor, augmented and diminished triads across 2 octaves. The bass note remains constant and the other notes change, mostly 1 change per bar, but in the last 2 bars, 2 notes per bar. This is definitely one that I would try and memorize. Try and get the chords into your ears, into your system. It will mean you can really use your ears and not your eyes as you practice this one. Number 11. This is based on the same sequence of triads as number 10, so it's just as well that you memorized it. Now though, instead of straight up and down, the triads here are broken, zigzagging across the 2 octaves. So it's a great one for flexibility of your lips, and as you're listening, make sure that you really hit the center of each and every note, like stringing a row of pearls. As with all these exercises, breathe as and when you need to, keeping the focus on relaxed breathing. The chest is up and open, the throat is relaxed, and always listening to the sound of the air as it enters your body. So take a little time to do this so that you can stay relaxed and maintain your very best sound. Number 12. The next logical step on from triads is, of course, 7th chords, and that's what exercises 12, 13 and 14 are all about. In number 12, we have the 4 different 7th chords on each bass note, dominant, minor, half diminished and diminished, going across 2 octaves, starting this time from B in the middle of the stave, working down to the low C. Number 13. In number 13, we see the same sequence zigzagging across the 2 octaves. In number 14, the focus is on the dominant 7th chord, starting with a full 3-octave range, then again from the bottom with each 7th chord starting from the lowest playable inversion and moving upward each step in a different inversion. Number 15. Number 15 is in 2 parts, A and B. It's all about diminished chords. In part A, we start on low C and move chromatically upwards across the entire range of the instrument. And in part B, the triad is the same, but the 2nd and 3rd notes are reversed. Again, we are offered different articulations, and this time, for the first time, triple tonguing is an option. Number 16. Number 16 is similarly in 2 parts, A and B, and it follows the same pattern as number 15, but this time it's all about the diminished 7th. Number 17. This final exercise in the book is all about trills, both tones and semitones across the entire range of the instrument. Some are easy, some are hard, and as with all the exercises in the book, the aim is to get them all to the same tempo. Conclusion. So that's it. I told you it's a really comprehensive book. You may, like me, find yourself returning to the same exercises time and again, or you may prefer to focus on systematically working through the book. Whatever your approach, here are my 3 final tips. Work slowly and as evenly as you possibly can. Slow, controlled, consistent practice will reap far greater rewards far more quickly than splashing through too fast and letting wrong notes creep in. After all, you're training the small muscles in your fingers the right pathways. The correct tempo is the tempo where you can maintain the evenness and control for the entire exercise. So spend a little extra time on the most difficult sections or combination of notes before tackling a longer chunk. Always use your best tone regardless of the dynamic or articulation. And a healthy tone starts with a healthy breath. So check your posture and remember that a breath in is the relaxed part of the cycle. If you'd like some more advice about breathing, take a look at the breathing video, and I'll link that here in the description box too. And finally, work on small chunks with really careful, intense listening. Memorize as much as you can so that you can close your eyes to really enhance your listening experience. So that's it. Happy practicing. I hope you've enjoyed this. See you next time.